Thanks, everyone. So excited to be back here. And sorry? Oh, great. Yay. Free publicity. Yay. Okay, so I'm just so excited to be here. Second I walked up these stairs, I was just beaming with joy. And thank you, Anupa. Thank you, Saloni. I don't know where you are in the audience. Thank you. Really appreciate this opportunity. So, yeah, it's this one. Okay, so I'm actually going to tell you three stories today. I'm going to tell you three stories. One is that of an injured beggar. The second is that of a cashmere sweater. And the third is that of two girls who are best friends. So let's start with the injured beggar. So a few years back, I used to work for a non-profit called Pratham, and a lot of my work used to take me to Chandigarh. So I used to fly into Delhi and then take the train from Delhi to Chandigarh. So this one time I was on the Chandigarh railway platform, and this injured beggar, who seemed apparently injured, had a white muslin cloth wrapped around his head and his leg with bloodstains on it, walked up to me. I was tired, I'd had a long day, and, he asked me for some money, and I said, just gave him a 20 rupee note and said, thank you so much. 2 months later, I was back in Chandigarh, and this gentleman came up to me again. And this time, I remembered him. He obviously had no recollection, but was asking for money again. So I said, "ठीक है, I'll give you another 20 rupees, but this time, can I ask you a question?" He said, "Sure." I said, "भैया, आपका धंधा कैसा चलता है?" So I was like, how does your business go? So first he was a bit shocked, he was like, oh, how can you ask me such a question? But then he said, "Acha chalta hai." I said, "How much money do you make?" 10,000 rupees a month, which is significant for a beggar. I asked him, how do you know, who's your core customer? He said, typically if on Tuesdays, if I stand outside this compartment, these are the number of people who come and I get so much money from them. On Sundays, I stand outside that compartment and I get that much money. So I was pretty stumped. I mean, I was shocked that firstly, this guy was able to make ends meet to such an amazing degree. But more importantly, I'm a marketing student. So I was amazed at how this guy, without any education, without a fancy degree, no MBA, etc., had really figured out how to evoke emotion in his customer, right? His customer being people on the platform of Chandigarh railway station. And he had the entire persona, the brand, the garb, the voice, everything to evoke this emotion of sympathy in me, and it worked. Right? So basically, stories and brands go hand in hand together. And that's really where my passion is and where my area of interest is. Now, I know Amrit is going into stories later, so I'm not going to, take away your glory. But I do want to talk a little bit about what makes a good story, right? There are three elements that make a good story. First is setting up a situation. So you have once upon a time, there was, in a far, far away land. Second, you create a conflict. And the conflict could be in the situation. It could be in the characters as well. So you have maybe an Antonio and a Bassanio. You have a David and a Goliath. You have a Harry Potter and a Voldemort. And the idea is that there are, the conflict is lying at the foundation of maybe two characteristics. So it could be, a strength and a weakness, or a rich and poor, or it could be good versus evil. And the third step is that everyone wants a good story and everyone wants a good ending. So you have to offer a resolution for a story to be good. Now, in brands have to go one step further. Brands have to incite a call to action where they have to make you do something. So it's not just ending at step 3. They're saying, okay, now go into my store, buy something, go and either even check out my website, or maybe even just, motivate or create a social change of some sort. So my second story, which was out of a cashmere sweater, I'm actually going to show you through a YouTube link because I saw this video a few months back and I thought it was a phenomenal example of how brands use stories well. So if you don't mind, just yeah. It's a true story, yeah.
You'd have to be stupid or crazy to end up in the middle of the Gobi Desert with $2.5 million in cash. These guys were a bit of both. That That's Matt. Matt was making a perfectly good living in New York when he decided to quit.
I hated it.
Can't argue with that, Matt.
It was like a week after that, I got a phone call from one of my college buddies, Dietrich.
Matt. Dietrich looks a little like Michael Phelps, but can't swim nearly as fast. Anyhow, Dietrich was taking a trip to Mongolia.
I was his only friend that didn't have a job. So a week later, I was on a plane to Mongolia.
Next thing you know, they're on the other side of the world in Ulaanbaatar. That's the capital of Mongolia. Everyone knows that, right? Right. They met a couple locals named Bodio and Ishe and really hit it off.
Bunch of goofballs.
These guys were so nice that they invited our intrepid travelers to meet their families out in the countryside. Sounds nice, doesn't it? So the next morning, they piled into a truck and started driving until the road stopped.
Bodio never looks at where he's going. He plays cards the whole time, just pedal the metal, 80 miles an hour. He just is like, okay, we're gonna go that direction. It's crazy.
And then they kept driving, 20 hours until the truck broke down. And then they rode on the back of motorcycles until dawn when they reached a yurt belonging to a nomad named Dash. What's up, Dash?
Dash comes out and greets us with a bottle of goat's milk vodka. Goat's milk vodka tastes a little bit like throw up. We drink with them all night long. We have an amazing time. We don't speak their language and they don't speak ours. We just know that we're getting along because they seem to be making fun of us and smiling a lot.
Getting weird. Cross off the list. Getting weird. Well, it was about to get a whole lot weirder, because the next day, Bodio and Ishe told our boys that they weren't going back to the capital for a month.
Either we can find our own way home or we'll go with them when they leave in a month.
Yeah, they weren't going to be able to find their own way home. So with a month ahead of them, Matt and Dietrich decided to embrace the time they had and learn everything they could. They learned to ride motorcycles. They milked and herded goats. They even tried Mongolian wrestling. But what fascinated these guys more than anything else was what their nomadic hosts do for work. They raise a special kind of goat with the most luxurious hair in the world. You might know it as cashmere.
We became really good friends with them. Almost family, it felt like by the end of the trip. We leave thinking that we should find a way to help the people that helped us.
They begin to work with Bodio on non-profit work, breeding programs, veterinary work, grassland management strategies. But something wasn't right. They came to the harsh realization that the entire cashmere market was rigged. Middlemen were fixing the prices so that they made all the profit while the herder barely scraped by. So they came up with a lunatic idea. They would become the buyers. They would become cashmere traders and give their friends a bigger piece of the pie. They realized that if they cut out the middlemen that normally take all the profit, they could pay the herder more while also selling the product for less. All they had to do was figure out how to get millions of dollars.
$2.5 million so we could buy all the material from all the herders, everything in the region.
They went back to New York and raised a ton of money. That's where all that cash comes in.
We get to Mongolia a year later with the money. We drove 20 hours in the middle of the Gobi Desert and we bought 60 tons of cashmere. That's 20 tractor trailers filled with raw material.
Now what does one do with 60 tons of cashmere? Well, you make clothes. But these guys don't make clothes. They could barely make breakfast.
We just figured, like, how hard could it be to make a sweater? It's actually really, really hard.
So they teamed up with co-founder and chief creative officer Hadass. When people see her clothes, they say, Hadass, she do it. Okay, they don't say it out loud, but they think it. So now they had a company, but they still needed a name. Naadam is the name of a festival that brings Mongolians together in celebration of its people and culture. So Naadam seemed like the perfect name for a company that brings both the consumers and creators of the world's finest clothing closer together. What started as a couple goofballs stranded in the Gobi Desert eventually led to the creation of the fairest, most sustainable, and most affordable, top-of-the-line cashmere the world has ever seen. So it's good for you, good for them, and yeah, guys, good for you.
So, you know, it's a great example because it's the exact same 4 steps I talked about, right? You set up a situation, these two guys are stranded in the middle of Mongolia, and the step 2 is they create this conflict, which is that there are these rich retailers who are taking away all the money from these poor herdsmen. And then they offer up a very simple resolution. Okay, we'll just start making these sweaters. We'll hire a fancy designer to design them. And then the fourth, in a very subtle way, they give you a call to action. They say it's good for you, it's good for them, and yeah, it's good for you as well. So it just captures how a brand is telling a story. Now, my third story is a little bit more personal. It's about a brand called Pippa Bella that I started. And I started this brand because I'm really passionate about two things, jewelry and brand building. Actually, when I told my husband that, he would like roll his eyes. He was like, "What? Where do I fit in into that?" When we first started Pippa Bella, for about 2 to 3 years, we focused largely on the product and the operations. But in the last year or so, we realized that the brand has to mean a lot more than just reaching out to the consumers through a product. So we wanted it to be through a story. So our marketing team and I sat down. We crafted an entire story where Pippa is a Spanish girl who's really adventurous and bold, and she's kind of spunky, and she's not got a whole lot of friends, but she's very loyal towards the friends that she has. And Bella is this Italian girl who's very classic and demure, and kind of your girl next door, and everybody loves her. Now these two girls are best friends, but they're also roommates, and we crafted a story which we then presented to a producer who is now actually going to publish a web series around these two characters. And again, it's very subtle branding because we're not saying Pippa Bella in any outright way. You're not going to see it anywhere in the web series, except for maybe on the front title page, but you won't see it anywhere else. But we're bringing out the story of we're bringing out our brand through the story of these two girls. And I think that's the power of storytelling when it comes to brands. And I'm going to bore you a little bit. I think Dr. Sandani is obviously way more experienced in this area. But what happens when you tell stories versus if I gave you a presentation with like 20 bullet points on it, is that bullet points are just going to activate one part of your brain. Whereas if I'm telling you a story, then a lot more of your brain gets activated because you start relating the experiences of the story with your own personal experiences. And scientists have found that the emotions that you have experienced in that event, you actually start associating with the story. So it's really important for brands, if they want to have some kind of call to action or try to get customers to do something, to evoke that sense of emotion. So basically, the ultimate goal of marketing really is to inspire you, right? I mean, you've got some brands who try to motivate change. There have been a lot of campaigns that brands have done to actually, social campaigns that they've done. They either try to get you to walk into a store, they try to get you to buy something. So ultimately, storytelling just helps evoke that sense of emotion in a consumer that becomes really important and critical for brands. So all I do is all I ask from you is the next time you are in front of a brand, may it be an H&M or a Pepsi or a Forever 21 or even something as mundane as like say Natraj pencils or something, I just encourage you to look for the story behind the brand, because that really is the essence of how a brand is telling you to come and buy it. Thank you. Yeah, I'm open to questions as well.
Questions for Shuchi?
I stand up. So, compared to the Nadam story, which is the genesis of the brand itself, yours is about a fictionalized of two characters. So, how are you going to posture it so that your story gains currency? Because theirs was how their brand actually is posturing that, we're fair cashmere. So, how is that going to affect the way you tell your story, and what do you want to try to say?
Yeah, so I think brands tell stories in different ways. Of course, for Nadam, that's their USP. That's the core of their brand, is that they're fair trade cashmere sweaters. For us, the USP of our brand is we provide you with fast fashion jewelry and designs that are really trendy, right? So how do I create a story around that, right? For me, I have to create a fictitious story. And so for me, the idea was more that, so to answer your question, I think we asked a few customers this as well. What we came to realize is that this conflict of identities that really exists in these two characters actually exists in a lot of our consumers as well. And it's one single consumer. So for example, one day a user may be feeling a little bit Pippa, and another day a user may be feeling a little bit Bella. seller, right? So it's the same person looking for different types of products. So now our marketing strategy differs for that same user, but different kinds of products. Actually, we did a very sort of jugadu market research. We had my cousin basically be the moderator, and we and so all in all, I think I spent like $30,000. Yeah. I think when you're a startup, you just have to be really frugal. Unfortunately, I don't have like 20 lakh budgets. I think it depends at different stages. I do think that there's a lot of value because, we're an e-commerce company, so we're actually quite far removed from our customer. So we flew down to key cities where our customers lie, Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay. And it was the first time for a lot of us that we'd met some of these guys, so just to even understand from them. And I think everyone's purchase behavior is different. So it's a little bit of sitting down with them, asking them why they buy something versus something else. There's value to it. But I don't believe in high budgets. I think you have to be smart about how you do it, yeah.